Welcome to episode 3 of the Cube Talk podcast. This month I had the privilege of interviewing Jennie Landreth, who's the development director at Choices Pregnancy Resource Center here in Chattanooga. Jennie's not a native Chattanoogan, but calls it home after living here for 30 years. Jennie enjoyed working in marketing before staying at home and homeschooling her 3 kids. Her passion for life and family kept her involved in several ministries during that time, including being a patient advocate for Choices, vice president of Pathway for Healing, director of Turning Point Camp, director of her kids' local homeschool co-op, a TBRI practitioner, and serving her local church. Now that her kids are grown, she is thrilled to be serving full-time at Choices. Choices Pregnancy Resource Center serves women and men facing unplanned pregnancies, providing pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, limited STD scanning and treatment, and options counseling. Choices offers support to moms and dads of babies up to 2 years old with education, mentoring, and baby supplies. Choices also offers help for women and men who are suffering the effects of an abortion. All of Choices services are free and life-affirming. Without further ado, let's jump in. Well, Jennie, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I really am super excited about you being on this podcast and love what you're doing, and so excited to be able to just highlight what God is doing both in your life and at Choices where you work. And let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, what makes you you, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, I'm not a native Chattanoogan, but I've been here for 30 years, so I claim it as home.
Okay.
Came here to go to college at Covenant.
Yeah.
And then just kind of made a life here, ended up raising 3 kids, homeschooling, and my life has been nothing like I thought it would be, but it's been an interesting journey to see the different seasons that God has taken me through, and I know everyone is to prepare me for the next one, but I am seeing that everything that I've done has been part of God's plan. I love people. I love relationships.
That's very evident.
Thanks. I also love the church. I love that institution that God ordained to be the practical means of grace. How he cares for us is through one another.
Yeah.
And so I was raised in church. I'm a preacher's kid. And I've always just had such a passion and love for how God takes care of us through each other. And he speaks family, right? That's our extended family. Yeah. God is Father. To me, families are the core basic building block of civilization.
Yes.
So church is really a passion of mine too. So I do see how God has used so many different seasons in my life to bring me where I am today. But what makes me me is I love people. My family says I love to boss people around, which I'm sure it's not that bad, but I do have a lot of that. I'm a visionary, so I want to see, I have all these ideas, and they always come to me about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh, me too. I'm glad I'm not alone.
That's the best ones, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And then you can't go to sleep because you're so excited about them.
I know, yeah. I've been very sleep deprived lately.
Right. Do you ever wake up in the morning and totally forget what it was?
Yes, so I try to, like sometimes I'm not motivated enough, but I try to just grab my phone and write a short little note.
Yeah,
Well, so for me, I'm a musician, so a lot of times for me it's a line for a song or a play on words or something. I got to remember that.
I think that's part of it because the quiet of the night allows us to really focus and really for God to be able to speak to us and to show us those things when we're not distracted by all the other things in life. So
it's like Elijah, right?
Yeah.
When God speaks to him in the stillness, not in the thunderstorm or the fire or anything like that.
Right. But I'm drawn to the thunderstorm, drawn to all the activity.
It's exciting.
Yeah. I get bored if I don't have some of that.
Yes. Man, so how'd you get involved with Choices? Well, actually, before I ask how you got involved with Choices, tell us what Choices is for those that don't know.
Sure. So Choices is a pregnancy resource center. And basically, we serve women and men who are facing unplanned pregnancies in some of the ways that they need help in those first few weeks.
Right.
When you start a family, it's already turns your life upside down. If you don't have a plan to do that, it's really a huge momentous shift. Your entire life changes.
Right,
So
right.
helping them in those moments, but also those can really be turning points for people where they have to take a step back and reevaluate their life and reevaluate, what am I going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Times where we feel vulnerable, we feel out of control, and that's often where the Lord steps in into our lives to really get our attention, to draw us closer to Him. And so Choices is very focused on that. It's in those moments. We're providing free medical services like pregnancy tests, ultrasound, STD scanning, and treatment, and some other more exciting things I'll share in a minute. But we take those opportunities, we offer them free services, but we're able to love on them and just say, you are not alone. You don't have to do this by yourself. And really, the Christian community is there, but it's God who loves them, and they have value, their babies have value. And then those who do choose to parent their babies, we put our money where our mouth is. We follow through on our promises, and we are there. So we give them parenting, education, classes, mentorship, discipleship, and then baby supplies. So they don't have to buy, if they can participate in our program, they actually don't even have to buy anything for their baby. We provide all those things through that. And then the other arm of our ministry is for those who did choose abortion. The trauma and the wounds that come from that are can be devastating and can last a lifetime. And so we want to help those women and men who have been affected by abortion. So we offer mentoring and counseling with them, try to help them find healing, forgiveness. And then just like God designs is that we use our mistakes and we use the hurt and pain in our lives to then minister to other people.
Amen.
So that's a focus for us too.
Yeah, it's like when Joseph says to his brothers in Genesis, the Lord took what the enemy meant for evil and He turned it for good.
Exactly.
God can do that with any situation, right?
Yes.
And I imagine you see that there.
Right. Well, our whole staff is built of broken people, right?
Yes,
We've been through mistakes and wounds, both our own choices and from others in our lives. God has used that in our lives, and of course then compels us. Well, I've got to help somebody else going through that. So we're just a whole staff of broken people who love Jesus and want to spread that healing to them as well.
So I'm picturing people that are coming into your clinic and just imagining like some of the things that they're maybe feeling as they come to you guys and reach out to you guys and things like that. Like even if they're like a pregnancy is planned, there's still like some real scariness to that. And like, even though there's joy, like there's also like a little bit of grieving that has to happen, because it's like, okay, regardless of whether or not this is ultimately a good thing for me or not, like my life has to change. Right.
You can't undo. You can't undo what's been done, and it is life altering. So there's that moment of shock where it has to kind of sink in, or feelings of denial, like this can't be true. Sometimes just having someone else, most of our clients, our patients who come into the clinic, they've already taken pregnancy tests at home. They're pretty sure. But just hearing someone else say it as well helps make it real. But that's that moment where, yes, your entire life changes, your identity changes. You just go from being a person to being a parent, and that's changing completely who you are. It's a moment.
Oh my gosh.
The other thing with when our patients are coming in, those feelings that you were talking about, that overwhelming feeling of I can't do this, put that on top of people are going to judge me. Put that on top of the responsibility financially and emotionally. All those things combined, create so much fear. And that's what the enemy loves to use to get us to make poor decisions, is fear. And so even the environment at Choices is so important, where they feel safe, where they feel that they are valued, because the fear and we talk about anxiety, we talk about stress, we talk about a lot of those, but really when you boil it down, I do think as a Christian that fear is the enemy's greatest tool. And they are in such a fearful place because there are so many unknowns, when there's unknown. It's
like, how do I act? And when I don't know what's going to happen next.
They don't even know what to ask. How do what do I need to know? I don't know.
And if they don't have like a good relational foundation too, or a network of people that care for them, like, oh my God, even scarier, because it's like, all right, I have all this unknown and I have to do it myself.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh.
And even so many patients come in, they actually have that foundational, but because they've never tested it in this situation, they question it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they will come in and know that in theory, my parents will support me and my grandma will help me. But that moment of stepping into, I've got to tell them, I have to face what I've done. What if they're not going to be
It's no longer abstract, you know?
What if they're going to be mad? What if they do turn me away? Like, that fear of rejection is so deep in all of us that even those people who have really strong, solid families will hear them say, I'm scared to tell them. I don't want them to know.
And, you know, that's something, too, that I think is very valuable that you guys provide, is you're able to look at these people and say, I see you. And, like, regardless of what anybody else does, like I'm in your corner.
Yes.
You know, and I actually get what you're going through right now, you know, and can do something about it.
Yeah, and there's no judgment.
There's
no judgment, and there's no emotion here that, you know, if someone tells their family members, they're going to react. And yet at Choices, it's a very safe place. This is what we talk about all day long. So we're not gonna go, you know, or anything like that. We're just gonna be, you're pregnant, you've got an STD, whatever they're facing, this is what we do all day, and we want to love you through it. So it's a phenomenal opportunity to show the love of Jesus in such practical ways where they are so open to wanting to feel valued, wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel like they're part of a family, they're not alone. All those things are, you know.
And what a privilege you guys have, too, of like being invited into such a vulnerable part of a person's life.
It's a huge privilege. It is absolutely an honor. Yeah.
So, I like numbers as well.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned you have some stats on people that come into your clinic.
Yeah, let me throw some out there for fun.
Yeah, throw some out there for fun.
So just this year, we have over 600, and we're about, halfway through the years as we do fiscal year. We have over 600 new clients and patients that have walked through our door that have never been there before.
Wow.
So we're really excited about that. Even just in the month of January, we had 27 Choices babies born, meaning they came when they were pregnant. We've been able to serve them in some way, and we love to hear back about those babies.
How exciting.
That are born. Yeah. That was another number I was going to... our parenting program, they do the mentor, they meet with a mentor, and really they have the same mentor that meets with them all the way through, and investing in their lives. It's not just a parenting class about how to feed your baby, but conflict resolution, and of course the gospel through that, either bringing them hopefully to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, or helping them to recommit to a life of walking with the Lord. And so we had 6 graduates from that program in January. So we're so proud of them and love to see how they have so much courage. And they accept the help, but they are empowered with it and are learning how to be a good mom, learning how to be a good dad, and they're doing it.
Yes. And that's the thing, too. Like, you guys aren't just giving a handout, and you're not just making people take a class, like, to get something out of them or something like that. It's like, look, you're a whole human being. You can do this. Let's, like you said, empower you to do this. You know, and what a confidence booster that is for someone who is coming in scared out of their minds, and then however long later being like, I can do this, you know, or this was scary, but like, here I am, and I'm not devastated. I'm okay.
Right. And I'm keeping this little human alive every day.
Yes.
That's, you know, sometimes that's the end goal. You know, when you've got a little one, is I just got to keep this kid alive for another day. You know? But even our parents who go through the program, their own walk, their own needs it's very specific. So for example, in our parenting program, we have many, many, many classes, and there's a few that we require, like CPR and you know, protecting your child from sexual predators, things like that, are really basic safety things. But then the parents get to choose. So you've got a mom who had 5 little brothers and sisters. She knows how to change a diaper.
Right.
She doesn't need a class on that. But so they get to pick the things that are interesting to them, the things that they feel like they want to learn about.
So cool.
And when you have a learner that wants to learn, they're, we're all much more engaged. And so it's very personalized that way as we get to know them as
that's
individuals.
Cool too. Yeah. Because it's not a one size fits all thing either.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Parenting, every parenting experience is parenting 101.
Yeah.
So every one of them is different. Yeah. But we do get to where we know them very personally and just really care about their lives, and seeing them succeed is just an absolute joy.
Yeah.
Situations that they start where they start from to where they can be, yeah. So
one of my favorite stats that I've heard from you guys is just how many people who maybe have abortion as an option on the table when they come in, changing their mind once they see the baby on the ultrasound.
Yes.
Remind me what that stat is.
So I'll clarify too.
Yeah.
What's really powerful about seeing their baby on the ultrasound and hearing the heartbeat is also with a Choices trained staff person or volunteer who walks with them in that moment, right?
Yes,
so it's those two pieces of it together where we're able to help them process what they're seeing. So
that's good. Yeah.
And I'm gonna use nationwide because it's a podcast, right? Anybody can listen to this. So nationwide, of the women who come into an ultrasound considering abortion, doesn't mean they've necessarily decided on it, but it's on the table as one of their options. Over 80% of them, when they see the ultrasound, hear the heartbeat, choose life.
Wow.
So it's just such a powerful moment, just to have that window. And, our culture, the enemy lies. There's such a lie to tell people that it's not a baby yet, right? And I think that's why, having a podcast, having this opportunity and so many for Christians to be talking about these things, having these conversations, it's so important because if we're not talking, you can bet the enemy's still talking.
Oh my gosh,
and giving them these messages. And so we have patients that come in who really seriously don't think it's a baby because that's what they've been told. And these are smart people, but this is what they've been told, and so this is what we believe. So
it's so prevalent. Why would they believe something different?
Sure, that's what everybody says. It's just the accepted norm. So when they get into that room, and they kind of sometimes will have that moment like, oh crap, that's a baby, and then you can see it. It's just a really powerful moment. I love how God has made the development of babies to where all the parts and pieces of us are actually developed so early on, and they're just tiny. And so the growth of a baby in the beginning is much faster than, say, the 3rd trimester, where everything's already formed. It just now is getting a little bit stronger and bigger. But in those early weeks, when you can see fingers and toes.
Yeah, it's like, man, that's a little person.
It's just a powerful moment. Yeah. So it's a gift. It's a gift that we are able to do ultrasounds. It's not a cheap procedure, and it takes a lot of training.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really, being here in the Chattanooga community, I think is just such a blessing because there are so many people who believe that it's important and who financially give so that we can do those for free.
Yeah,
and they're always free. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, I remember. You're right. It is kind of it takes a lot of training, or I imagine it would, because when my wife was pregnant with our daughter, I remember going in and seeing an ultrasound, and they'd be like, "Oh, look, there's the foot," and there's. I'm like,
what?
Are you sure? Cool.
Kind of looks like a cloud, and the fuzzy TV. Yeah.
But then, of course, once it's pointed out, it's like, oh, okay, I see that.
Yeah. We did live ultrasounds at our banquet last year. And we had a 10-week baby and then 19-week old babies, and we were just amazed at how many people were really excited to see, is actually just being able to see the baby move and kind of have people point things out.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and at one point the baby turned and looked right at what you think the camera or whatever on the TV, and it was like the baby was going, "Hey, hey everybody!" But those are such powerful moments, and being so small and yet moving, and the heartbeat and all those things. And it's our natural instinct, right? We are created
Yes.
to care for we're created to care for each other, but the drive for us to care for our own is so strong.
Yes.
It's been suppressed by the enemy,
Right.
or by fear and the circumstances. But when we can kind of help them step back from that and say, let's look at the bigger picture, because your decision right now actually will affect you for the rest of your life. So we don't have to panic here. We can talk through these things. We can come up with a plan. So many of them naturally go, okay then, because nobody wakes up one day and says, I wish I could have an abortion.
Right.
Nobody feels that way. It's a last resort.
Yeah, there's some desperation involved in that. Yeah.
When they're given these opportunities, it's really, I couldn't imagine spending my day any other way than doing what we do at
That's
Choices.
so exciting.
It's a lot of fun. So you had asked how I got into doing this. Is that, do you want me to touch on that a little bit?
Please do, yeah.
You know, a lot of our staff have some really impactful experiences around either teen pregnancy or abortion. Actually, mine isn't so dramatic, but I think probably a lot of people might relate to it. As a teenager, I love the movie Dirty Dancing. I love Patrick Swayze. But the movie Dirty Dancing, you know, what begins the conflict in that movie is a botched abortion.
Okay.
And because that dancer can't dance, then another one steps in, and then that's the story of that movie.
Yeah.
Well, as a Christian growing up in a Christian home, I didn't think twice about it. I didn't think twice about the whole concept of that abortion in that movie.
Right, yeah.
But what I didn't realize is that message was very powerful. Even that tiny little message, subtle message in that movie was enough for me to, even though I was raised in a Christian home, I was raised to believe abortion was wrong. But I came out of that in the later teen years thinking, well, I would never have an abortion, but I would not tell anyone else to not have an abortion. And I really believe a lot of that perspective came from the normalizing that happened from that movie.
Yeah, and so, like you said, it's so subtle, but that's
but
part
powerful.
of why it's able to impact you without you realizing. You know, because if it was in your face, that's easier to just say, "Oh, okay, no." You know?
Exactly, right. But they all just kind of accepted it as normal, and so it compelled me to feel that way as well. Well, then when I came to college and was getting a Christian education and really learning how to look at life through a lens of a biblical worldview and how that applies to everything, it hit me like a ton of bricks. How is it that babies are dying every day and we as Christians are going on with our lives like nothing's happening?
Right.
And they weren't. There were lots of Christians out there doing things, but for me, I was. And so that was a really turning point for me in my faith as I began to apply the biblical knowledge that I was learning about into everyday life.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, Dirty Dancing looked completely different to me, that movie and my own convictions. And so even in college, I began to, before I even had a car, I would ride the van down the mountain and come to where the abortion clinic was here in Chattanooga on Sundays and pray. Back in 1991, started doing that. And so God just began to just grow this passion in me for the women and men who needed Jesus, needed support, and the love for family, the love for life, understanding we're created in the image of God. Like all those pieces came together for me. And so even through my life of getting, I moved away to go to seminary and then moved back and having kids, raising kids. There were different seasons where I just was always somehow involved with the pregnancy center here, whether sometimes I help with marketing and then when my kids got to be old enough, then I started coming back in the center and volunteering as a patient advocate.
Okay, yeah.
And so it really, I don't have some dramatic story like a lot do, but honestly, I look now at social media, the messages that our kids are being bombarded with, and our young adults, all of us really, it kind of, to me, it reinforces is just how powerful those messages are in changing someone's worldview, which then compels me that we need to be having these conversations all the time in our families, in our communities, with our friends. We need to be talking and talking and talking and digging. God's not afraid of us digging for the truth, because we always find him. He's truth.
Come on, yes.
So things like this I think are just so important, and it's part of my job is going to churches and having these conversations and trying to encourage them to have these conversations. You know, you may have a teenage son or daughter, and while they may not be at risk for a pregnancy, they know someone. They know someone who is. And so I just love that you're doing this. I love these conversations. But
well, it was really meaningful, I know, to our students when you came and spoke a few months ago here at Cube Living. They were talking the rest of the night about those things, you know, and that's good.
That's what we want.
You said, we need to be talking about them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that the main way that you would say that we can kind of fight against this false narrative that the enemy is trying to throw at us?
1,000% the main way. 1,000%. Giving, serving, praying, those are all really important pieces to our ministry too. Obviously, all of our services are free. We do need donors to give, you know, and we can't pay every person in there, so we do need volunteers. So all those things are important, and of course prayer is important. So I'm not saying any of those are less important, but if talking to anyone who cares about life and says, what can I do? Those conversations are the most important thing. So many people who have had an abortion, we know that statistic now is almost 1 in 3 of women under the age of 45 have had an abortion. 1 in 3.
I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and so many, you didn't realize it because they don't talk about it.
Right.
People don't go around, I mean, the culture is trying to encourage that more now, but in general, especially in our community, people don't brag about their abortions. They hide them. They're associated with shame and guilt. And even if they don't have it, they think other people will condemn them. So it's not talked about. But if someone who's hiding that hears conversations where people aren't judgmental, there's no condemnation in Christ, right? But they're longing for everyone to find healing and hope and restoration and redemption in Jesus. If they hear you talking about it, that gives them the courage, right? And sometimes it could take, 20 touch points? It's that whole message, like you and I were just chatting before about, okay, I think maybe God's telling me something because I keep hearing it over and over and over.
Right, yeah.
Well, as Christians, let's be the one that they can hear it over and over and over until they finally have the courage to say it themselves.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's giving them almost like the emotional permission to to be able to
we have to tell them up front, I'm not going to condemn you before they say before they share the hurt and pain that they've experienced in their life, if they know that's the reaction they're going to get. So we have to give them a preview.
Yes. Yeah. So how do we get better at having those conversations in that kind of way? Because it's also easy to just get caught up in slogans or talking points on either side or whatever. And nobody listens to any of those on either side of, this conversation. So how do we go deeper past that? I imagine it has something to do with just like sitting across from somebody and saying, man, you are a whole person with a story. And you are created in the image of God, and just starting with that mindset, and then being able to speak life. But I mean, practically, what does that look like?
Well, I love that you asked that, because that's the kind of question where, again, there's phrases, there's things we've heard all along, and we think if we just say those that they'll be powerful enough. But it is that investing in a person, hearing their story, that's so powerful. Even if you have someone who has completely different beliefs than you. The key to getting them to engage in a conversation is not to come at them with arguments.
Right, it's
to find out, what do we have in common? What's one thing we have in common? So a lot of people who do think that abortion should be legal, who don't have a moral problem with it, even those kinds of conversations of asking them questions that will find something in common. So often some of them will say, well, I think abortion should only be allowed in the first trimester. Well, there you go, because so do you, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, we also believe it shouldn't be in the second or the third, but there's our thing in common, that first trimester.
Sure.
So let's talk about that. Why do you think that after this first trimester is a problem? What are the moral issues there? So asking those kinds of questions to someone, again, if they think you're coming at them to just disagree with them, you're not going to get anywhere. But if we care and we want to hear their side of things,
and I imagine really there's genuine curiosity in those questions too. Not just trying to snag them. Or
exactly.
It's like, gotcha.
Yep.
You said that, and you can't take it back. You're on camera.
Yep.
It's like, no. It's like, and just even the fact that you're asking questions too. That invites people to share more of what's going on inside of themselves, to think about things more deeply instead of just like trying to refute what they're saying or come at them with facts or an argument or whatever. It's like, you tell me what you think about this, because I'm curious, and like you actually matter because you're a person that's sitting in front of me, and then like when we give each other permission to actually like be honest and be whole people, like that's when some real life-changing conversation can happen,
Yeah. I always try to think that no one's going to listen to me unless they feel like they've been heard first.
Yes.
It's such an important part. But a lot of the news that's coming out today, a lot of the messages that are coming out right now, since Roe v. Wade was overturned, the attacks, basically I think the enemy lost its foothold with that. And so he has ramped up other ways to come at the pro-life beliefs, the pro-life movement, the pro-life work that's being done. And so there's lots of these things that come out that we can just talk about. We could have conversations. Did you see the news that said that, that technically it's not a heartbeat? Did you see, Stacey Abrams comment on that? Have those kinds of conversations. So granted, some of us try to stay away from political things, but those are things that, well, what do you think about that? Well, let's do some research. Let's Google it and see. Of course, Google does a lot of covert ways of suppressing the truth these days. But,
tell me about that a little bit. Like, how have you seen? I know you've seen that personally with Choices.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to hear more about that.
There's been a lot of changes there. Google and Yelp both have kind of suppressed searches to where so our Pregnancy Resource Center, we do offer information, options, counseling. So we talk about abortions. We'll offer information. We don't refer or perform them, of course. But because we don't, Google kicks us down on the searches.
Oh, okay.
So if somebody is searching for abortion help or abortion options, Google has kicked us down. And Yelp, for a while there, put most of these pregnancy resource centers are not actual medical clinics. Well, we are an actual medical clinic. We have full-time we have full-time nurse practitioner, and lots of trained medical staff. And so those were very deceptive. But so we've had to really get creative in other ways of trying to get the word out, including banners at UTC and just some other options. But
seen some of your billboards around when your swipe right goes wrong.
That's right. Yeah. We've really picked that. We for a while there didn't have any, but the need is great, and the enemy does not want people to know that kind of help is out there. So those have been really big challenges. But see, these are great conversations. We're going to circle back to that. How having those conversations is such a powerful tool in empowering people to have information. So it's often we actually just got stats this morning from our medical services director, and we do surveys with our patients and clients when they leave, and we've right now Google and Friends are the top 2 ways that people have heard about our center. So Friends is 33%.
That's awesome.
So word of mouth is extremely powerful.
That's so good.
So again, it's these conversations that are such
and
a key.
People are obviously like having a deep need met when they come to see you guys, or they wouldn't be telling people go here, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you're obviously so passionate about this kind of work, Jennie. I mean, you've already kind of touched on this, but just what makes this so meaningful to you? And then like, how is that sustained over the long term? And how do you see, Well, let's just start there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, if God will allow me, I would love to be at Choices for another 20 years because I can't fathom how I can't even, it doesn't even seem to me that it's a job. So many days it's fun. And it is so fulfilling. And to try to do a job where you don't get to see it, it's obvious.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that's a gift for me. So my husband works for a very large insurance company doing IT stuff. He never gets that feeling that he's ever helping someone. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
see
yeah.
how valuable that is. But I do have a passion. In fact, the job that I do, which is basically fundraising for the ministry, I was hired for my passion, not for my experience. So
Okay.
I'm learning things every day,
Yeah.
but I have such a passion for what we do. And I think really so much of that comes from a biblical worldview. I know
Yeah.
that is like, I'm really like taking it way, way back to understanding how to see every part of your life through that lens of the Bible.
Yes.
That makes what I do so much fun.
Yeah.
So understanding that I'm created in the image of God, understanding how valuable relationships are, that God is a relational God, how much he loves life, what gift life is, what a gift family is, and not
Yes,
just
yes.
biological family. I'm an adoptive mom, so family goes way beyond,
Right.
blood. But so those are all pieces that have come together to make this just the absolute how I would love to spend my day every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I'm learning so many new things, I do hope that the Lord allows me to stay there for a while because I am having a blast.
That's so good. So imagine there's somebody listening to this episode right now who's saying, man, like, I don't have that. Or maybe even like, I haven't chosen a career path yet, but I don't even know where to start. Like, how do you even go about finding a career that you're passionate about long term?
Wow. I look back on my life and it's a crazy, to talk about a crooked path to get where I am, but I don't think I'm done where I am. God really could, I could be in another place, if that's his will. But
Right.
I mean, as I look back on my life, once I kind of started getting out into the world as an adult, my own person, I've actually been involved in quite a few different ministries, like peacemakers and foster care, and I ended up doing a lot of other ministries along the way.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
I've kind of, whatever I'm in, I've owned it at the time.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Some of it actually just being a stay-at-home mom and homeschooling my kids, that was actually the hardest. That was the hardest one for me.
Yeah.
It just didn't come very natural. That was more out of obedience than
Sure.
fun, like it is now. But I do see how God puts me in those situations because he has so much to teach me. And I do learn. Sometimes I'm a little stubborn, but I do learn things from those situations that I can see that I've used in my next calling.
Yes.
But I don't really think that there is a one thing that God calls us to do, because we really are growing and changing. And if my life turned out the way I thought it was, it just would have been completely different. And I know that God would not have been able to teach me the things that he has.
Yeah.
So I often and I tell this to my kids a lot too, of what you're doing right now, it's not what you're going to do forever. But the passion, I love what Mike Rowe says. He says, bring your passion to your job. Don't expect your
Yes.
job
Oh,
to bring
come
you
on.
your passion.
Yes. Say that again. Say it again.
You got to bring your passion with you, right?
Yes.
But that passion comes from loving God, from loving life, from loving what he's done for me, which compels me to want to do it for someone else.
Come on, yeah.
And in the fundraising world, here in my ministry that I'm in, there is no way we could have these life-saving, life-impacting moments without the people who work the boring jobs. It seems like boring. And we all know that, in missions, it takes the person who sends them and it takes the person who goes.
Right, yeah.
But we see that even, a college student works for a summer, a grueling job, saves all that money, and gives it all to a ministry.
Right, yeah.
Well, that every moment that they were doing some mundane thing, it was kingdom work.
Amen.
It just doesn't
Yes.
feel like it at the moment, but if we know the truth, it's kingdom work. So I don't kind of have that philosophy of how am I going to get to the thing that God called me to? It's more of the next thing. And what am I supposed to learn in this place?
Yeah. How am I being faithful right now?
Yes. And being able to, like, I love what Justin talked about applying your ministry in whatever vocation you're in. Is it really is something we can do wherever we are. And I've kind of, in the things that God has called me in, I've tended to be more in a Christian environment than a non-Christian. But then my husband has been in a non-Christian environment the entire time.
Right,
And seeing just the ways that as we live out the biblical mandates in life, as we live out our relationship with God, that impacts wherever we are.
Yeah.
You know?
So how do you do that practically? You mentioned a couple minutes ago that you just owned the place that you're at. How are you intentional about that? What are some things that you said, all right, this is what I'm doing, or this is maybe the mindset that I'm in? I know you've kind of touched on that already, but
yeah. I think I'm probably still learning that, actually. I don't know that I have all that answer completely down pat, because we go through times where we're not content.
Sure.
And I think a lot of not being content is a great red flag that we need to back up and refocus. Because God, that if we're not living in a state of being compelled because of what God did for us, being compelled to do things for others. But I think intentional relationships are probably that lesson that I've just most recently learned that come to mind for me, is that living out that biblical worldview has to come through intentional relationships. And those are so powerful. And I think we often get caught up in the how many friends and people in our path versus the depth. And I heard Billy Graham one time say that he wished he knew less people more deeply.
Right.
And that's always hit me, that it's not about the things that we can get out of it. It's about pouring into other people. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does.
That's kind of a recent lesson that I feel comes to mind.
That is so good. That's what it all comes down to. I mean, we are all created in the image of God. I know I've said this before already, but I mean, that's just something that's been on my heart so much lately. It's just like what a gift it is that we can give people to look at them as a full person that's been created in the image of God.
Yeah, with value.
Yes,
Such value, yeah.
And how cool it is, for somebody who is curious enough to want to get to know you deeper as well. I mean, that just speaks into that value. It's man, I have a limited amount of time in my life, and I'm choosing to devote a good portion of that to knowing more about who you are.
Yes.
And oh
because
my gosh.
that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even, relationships, I mean, you hear these kinds of relationships all the time where someone might say, this person, I worked with this person for 5 years and they loved me. They cared about me in ways no one else did. We notice that stuff. Even if you're not preaching the gospel at the time, people feel love, because we live in a world where it's so much easier to condemn, especially with social media and the internet now. And it's so easy to judge people. So I think as Christians, we should stand out.
Yes.
Because we care about people so deeply.
Yes, yes, we should. We really should.
Yeah.
Because we've been cared for so deeply.
Yes, right. It's that, I love that word, compelled. It's not that I'm God forces me to do these good deeds. That's not it at all. But because of how deeply I've been loved, what I've been saved from, that is the natural reaction, is I'm compelled to love someone else. I think of the parable about the king forgiving the servant, and then the servant goes out and doesn't forgive someone else, and how that's just abominable to God. Because it really is. If you truly experience forgiveness and love and the value that God has placed in us through Christ, then that is absolutely what has to come out in our relationships. I think in any vocation we can do that. We can do that anywhere that we are. Even
Yeah.
stay-at-home moms who are just making macaroni and cheese all day, every day, where it really is hard to feel the impact. And,
Yeah.
you know, or out, you know, shoveling hay, which is, I hear, one of the worst jobs ever.
I wouldn't want to do it. I have bad allergies too, so it's like
Yeah.
on top of the manual labor, I just feel like
Right.
my eyes would be swollen the whole
Yes,
time.
the itch factor would be torture. Yeah.
Man. Well, if people want to be involved in Choices, they like what you guys are doing, they want to volunteer,
Yeah,
do they go on your website?
Yes.
Can they donate things?
Yes.
What do you guys need?
Yeah. So we have our baby store where our moms and dads shop for all of their baby supplies. We are always in need of baby items.
Okay.
And so people can donate. They can go to our Amazon registry. They can bring items there. A lot
Very
of
cool.
churches can just do a baby shower, you know, at the church and have people bring things to the church. That one's a lot of fun for people to do.
Very cool.
Especially when you have competitions like children's ministry versus
Oh,
the
yeah,
seniors
yeah.
who can bring in more diapers. Things like that are a lot of fun.
That's fun.
So we always need baby items, and we always need volunteers, and we do need financial support. We need
Okay.
prayer. So for those things, they can go to our website. Now, remember, we actually have two websites.
Okay.
One website is to our patients and clients with all of the information about our medical clinic and how they
Okay.
can sign up for an appointment. But we also have a website for our partners and supporters and community, and that's team.choiceschattanooga.org.
Okay.
So if you go to choiceschattanooga.org, you're going to end up on the client and the patient side.
Sure.
But if you put the word team in front of it, and there's a tab there that says Get Involved.
Okay.
And so they can click on that, and
Great.
there's a lot of information about how they can volunteer.
Okay.
So we have like volunteer opportunities that range, you know, could be that be there every week for 4 hours mentoring someone. It could be just show up at an event and help one Saturday morning a year, kind of
Right,
volunteers
right.
as well. So there's a lot of opportunities on there. So if you click on
So
the
good.
Get Involved tab, that will kind of direct you from there.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll put links to that in
Awesome.
the
Thank
description to whatever platform this ends up being on. So,
Great, yeah.
last thing, if someone's listening to this, they have an unplanned pregnancy, they're scared, they don't know what to do. What's one thing you want them to hear right now?
You're not alone. That no matter how overwhelmed you feel, you're not alone. There are pregnancy resources centers all over the country. There's over 3,000 of them in the country.
Yeah.
So to reach out and find one, there is help. There are people who will love you. And the reason they love them is because Jesus loved them.
Yes.
But I think that would be the main thing, is you are not alone in this process.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Jenny, for
Thank you,
taking some
Matt.
time to talk about this. This is exciting stuff to me. And like I said, I just love seeing like your genuine passion for this. It's inspiring. It's refreshing. And none of it seems contrived at all to me. It's just so it's so genuine. I love it. I love it.
I do love what I'm doing. I tell my boss all the time, I love my job. I love my job. It's really fun. So I'm very blessed. But this ministry is an absolutely incredible group of people who do amazing things. They're instruments of God, who, of course, is over all of that. But I'm glad that you see my passion in it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks.
praise God. Praise
Thanks
God.
for having me.
Yeah,
Talking about
it's
it.
been very fun. I wish we could talk for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
But,
I could.
well, thank you.